Virtue ethics as a school of ethical thinking doesn't really argue that there is a set of morals we need to apply in order to be virtuous. Rather, we should cultivate our character. We should mix our character with the texture of day-to-day life, and that way we will be moral and virtuous because we are virtuous.
The Stoics, who were a school of thought that existed around about the same time of Aristotle and so on and so forth, Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus and Seneca and Zeno and so on and so forth. They were all, broadly speaking, proponents of virtue ethics as well, thinking that one had to look within and prepare yourself for virtue. Epictetus, in book 3 of his discourses, writes the following: "You are not your body and hairstyle, but your capacity for choosing well. If your choices are beautiful, so too will you be. If your choices are beautiful, so too will you be." It's important for us all to act virtuously in our day-to-day life, and that is a reflection upon us and our character more than anything else. So therefore, virtue is not something which is about necessarily just thinking about ethical principles, nor is it about calculating things. It's really a link between virtues, us, and our actions.
The chief figure in virtue ethics, though, of course, is Aristotle. Aristotle lived in Greece around about 384 to 322 BC, and he was dominant in medieval political philosophy, just nicknamed the philosopher. He was, of course, taught by Plato, although in actual fact, he rejected most of his tutors' thinking. Aristotle was far more interested in the real than the ideal, and a variety of different human experiences rather than the ideal human experience. He was tutor to Alexander the Great, and an argument can be made that all Western philosophy is either Platonic or Aristotelian in nature. I don't think it's a particularly good argument, but nevertheless, it is an argument that's often made. So for Aristotle, being virtuous often involves using our life experience to achieve a balance when looking at the virtues. Because virtues often exist on some sort of scale with vice at either end, and the golden mean is the position in the middle, and we have to, as virtuous individuals, find out where the position should be. What's the practical position to take? Let's look at the very top one on this table here. Cowardliness is a vice, but also so too is rashness and putting yourself in too much danger. It's an excess of bravery, and bravery sits somewhere in the middle. Let's have an example. Suppose we were having a lecture on Aristotle and a grizzly bear burst into the lecture theatre. Well, the cowardly lecturer might, run away and leave their students to their fate, or cower behind the lectern. A rash lecturer might try and wrestle the grizzly bear, and that's not going to come out well for the lecturer in hand. Bravery here might mean involving calling for help, trying to marshal the bear to the corner and get the students out, or something. So, it's about here not doing the same thing all the time, but using your experience as a virtuous person to find out the best thing on this contingency to do. Likewise, if you've got money, if you let it gather dust under your bed, then that's problematic. If you waste it all extravagantly, then that's a vice of excess. Being a virtuous person means using your life experience to do the right thing at the right time, and that is virtuosity.
So, whereas utilitarianism argues that we judge the rightness or wrongness of an act by its consequences and the happiness it brings, so a rule, and deontology argues that we can, using things like the categorical imperative in living our lives, as if our actions were a maxim, says we can determine a rule there. That's not what proponents of virtue ethics thinks. Being moral or being virtuous is about character and becoming a virtuous person and applying that wisdom to the texture and the rhythms of everyday life, to applying it. And it might mean, therefore, that in certain circumstances, doing one thing is not the right thing in another circumstance. It's very much rooted to life, to living, our character, and how we mixed the two.
Just before I leave you, if you fancied a really accessible introduction to Aristotle's thinking and how virtue ethics applies to modern day living, literally your life, can I recommend this book here by Edith Hall, Aristotle's Way, 10 Ways Ancient Wisdom Can Change Your Life. An excellent bedtime read next to the swimming pool or whatever, and it will give you a really nice introduction to this way of thinking about ethics and life.